Hello again. Coming up today, the theme of focus and getting more done. More about my journey into biohacking and my top hacks for more energy. We'll talk about organ meat. Yes, it's going to be exciting. Talking about organ meats and how they can help you thrive. Home testing and lots more. Hi, I'm Tony. I'm an author, presenter at Sky Sports, and years ago I went to the jungle and got ill. Very ill. So this is my podcast adventure to find more energy. It's packed with biohacking, science, health tech, supplements, and some of the most well-known experts on the planet.
This is something I spent 4 months of my life doing with electrodes glued to my head so that you can do a lifetime worth of meditation.
Decide what you don't give a fuck about, which is something you don't care about.
Some of it gets quite out there.
I had some stem cells sent up to my house that I had stored, and then I injected myself with mannitol.
And we even hack hangovers.
Alcohol is poisonous. So is water and oxygen in the wrong dosage.
So that's my podcast, Zestology. Live life with energy, vitality, and motivation. So I want to get straight into it today on the theme of focus and getting more done. It's undoubtedly harder to focus than ever before, and actually there was a lot of this I thought about in my book, which has just come out, and my new book, which is going to come out next year, so it's not going to be that new, it's going to be a while into the distance. It's going to be all about focus. And I've been using Kanbana for years. If you just search for Kanbana with a K online, you'll find it. It served me very well. It's worth checking out. But I do think that focus and productivity, when you get it right, it all goes into leading a more energized life, because you focus on one thing at once, you get more depth and more concentration, and you do that thing better. But it's just hard to focus. And I have recently moved away from Kanbana and now switched to pomofocus.io. So that's POMO focus.io. I like this even better. You may well have heard of the concept of Pomodoro. It's focusing intently on one activity for 25 minutes. And for a 25-minute chunk at a time, you're going to focus just on that activity. So when you do that, you're more likely to achieve that activity better and get more done quicker. For example, if I'm trying to record this podcast, I'm also replying to WhatsApps and doing a few emails and trying to chat to somebody at the same time. It's not going to work, and I'm not going to do a very good job of doing this podcast either. It's debatable whether I'm going to do a good job anyway of this podcast, but there you go. What I like about this free desktop app, though, is it provides a countdown clock and an in-tab reminder of what I'm supposed to be doing, which is quite clever. So, it's very easy to have a WhatsApp tab open and you start to see the number next to the WhatsApp tab pile up, and you've got 2 unopened messages. But with the pomofocus.io app, which I've got open at the moment, I can tell that right now I've devoted 25 minutes to the task that I put in there, which is podcast love. And right now it's ticking down, so it's got 20 minutes and 45, 44, 43 seconds. And it sort of keeps you honest. At the end of the 25 minutes, you have a 5-minute break. And it's completely free. I think this is very effective, and so as I say, I've moved away from Kanbana, which has served me very well, and I think that's an excellent idea as well. But pomofocus.io is sorting out my focus this week. Let me know what you think. I posted a picture on the histamine intolerance Instagram page, which is histamine intolerance site, if you want to find it. And it's my kitchen wall. So it's a little through the keyhole moment, because we've got a plant wall on our kitchen, and it's coming on a treat here at home in London, I have to tell you. Now, do kitchen plants and indoor plants in general purify the air? I've tried to find out a definitive answer on this, and there was a famous NASA survey 15 years ago which said it did, and they took lots of plants up into the atmosphere and they found that it helped purify the air, in which no other thing could apart from these plants. But the science is now inconclusive, and I sent a link out on my newsletter this week about this. The science is inconclusive over whether plants actually do purify the air. But it does make you feel good, doesn't it? So if you head to my Instagram page for histamine intolerance, you will see what we've done with the kitchen wall. And you'll also be able to check out the special TV production grade orange light filters on the spotlights for added nighttime blue blocking. So, I mean, I might have spoken about this before, but we've got some lights in the house with light filters on them. So in the evening, it's sort of campfire light, and you start to make melatonin and you sleep better at night. And we've done that in the kitchen. But because they're spotlights, I went to a special TV production company and I bought these TV grade light. I think they're only £8 for the light gels, and you can get them in red or amber or orange or yellow or any other colour. And it looks pretty good at night. Bit like the red light district in my home, but it does look good. It's one of the best parts of our biohacked home, I think. So do go and have a look at that picture on Instagram, Histamine Intolerance site on Instagram, and you'll see the kitchen wall. I do have one confession before I move on, and that is that some of those plants you'll see in that picture are not real, but they're a lot easier to maintain, and quite a lot of them are. On to today's podcast chat, and recently I did a fun Instagram live with the knowledgeable Charlene Gisele, who is great. It was such a pleasure to talk to her, and in this podcast interview that you will listen to in a sec, which obviously originally was on Instagram live, you will get a taste of what my book is about, which was upcoming when we talked about it, but is now live. You will learn about my journey into biohacking and my top hacks for more energy. You'll hear a little bit more about home testing with Omnos. I don't know if you've heard of Omnos before. Great home testing kit and home testing site. And you'll hear about organ meats. Yes, kidney supplements. Very exciting. Lots more hacks on the way. Here is Charlene Gisele on Zestology. Well, look, nice to talk to you. I've been following your work and really excited to kind of catch up and talk about biohacking and lots of other stuff.
Likewise, I'm super excited, Tony. I would love to introduce, how you got into biohacking. Tell us a bit more. I know you have some great things coming up with your book, but I thought maybe you jump onto an introduction and you tell us a bit more about who you are, how you got into biohacking. I mean, I know, but it would be great to introduce our audience into more about you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, well, I suppose I got very ill a few years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. I kind of went to the jungle in the Philippines and I got ill. I had to have 3 months off work and pretty much in bed. I wasn't able to go to my job at Sky. I wasn't really able to go outside the house very much. The problem was that I had this kind of post-viral fatigue issue. Right. It's actually, in some ways, it's quite similar to what a lot of people are going through with long COVID, though thankfully I get back to full health eventually. But I mean, it really took me a year or two to get back to full health. And at the time when I was at my kind of lowest, I was spending far too much time consulting Dr. Google. And I decided that if I did get back to something approaching full health, then I would start a podcast, investigate a little bit more, and just try lots of sort of different hacks for more energy and make it a part of the podcast, really. So that's what happened. But, you know, I mean, whether I was recording the podcast or not, I'd be doing it anyway because I've got a house full of weird and wonderful stuff here and I really kind of quite enjoy it. As with you, it's a bit of a hobby, isn't it?
It is, yes.
I do like looking at all this different stuff. And, you know, all the time I'm finding weird and wonderful little hacks. Often they don't cost very much. I mean, I don't know if you've ever tried this, but the last few days I've worn compression socks in the evening before bed. It's completely changed my sleep. It's astonishing. I've been sleeping so much deeper.
It's funny you should mention that, actually. That's a hack that was given by one of my girlfriends who's a flight attendant. And she, as you know, they wear compression socks. And I was talking about how when it's summer days, sometimes my ankle get a bit more swollen if I go on a run. And I've started to wear workout compression socks, and they are marvelous. They're really so good.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Yes.
It's been interesting for me because apparently at night, for a lot of us, fluid can collect in the bottom of your body, in your feet and your legs. And by wearing compression socks before bed, not when you're asleep, but before bed, it pushes the fluid up. And then overnight, your neck is literally kind of wider, your airwaves and the way you breathe, there's just more space to breathe. Therefore, you're not waking yourself up as much in the middle of the night. And for me, I have been sleeping a lot deeper. I mean, I gave it a try, it's nothing to lose. But I have been sleeping very deeply. Whenever I tell people about it, they look at me slightly blankly, like I'm talking nonsense. But I think it's a great idea.
It makes sense physiologically as well, because it would activate the lymphatic system, right? By doing the compression, you would push up the blood system. And I think it works in a similar way than using a body balancer, for instance. Have you ever tried that, those compression boots?
No.
Oh, they're really...
yeah, I have. Oh,
you have?
Like the Normatec boots.
Yes, similar.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, I think I've lost your sound. Oh, you came back.
Yeah, don't worry. Can you hear me all right?
For a minute. Okay. Yeah, I can hear you again.
Yeah,
I just lost you for a minute.
I have a hack set up on my phone where I only use Instagram for 15 minutes every day. But unfortunately, it was trying to log me out of Instagram Live there. Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one with these. I have to confess, the reason that I found out about these compression socks is because I'm becoming a bit of an old man, and I was going for a pee in the middle of the night, and I was trying to find hacks for it, and that's what came up on Google. But it works, and it helps my sleep. It's great.
I'm glad. How are you doing with your nasal breathing? Because sometimes waking up for a pee at night can be related to the fact that you lose quite a lot of moisture by being a mouth breather. Have you ever tried mouth taping?
That's a good point. My partner Faith uses it every night, and I have used it a few times. First, I don't really like it very much, but also I don't feel like I need it. I don't feel like it, but maybe I do. But I don't feel like that. That didn't make much difference to me. But,
okay.
But yeah, it's definitely made a difference wearing the compression socks.
Oh, well, whatever works, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, thank you so much for telling us a bit about your journey into biohacking. I always find it fascinating because I think a lot of us, right, have a sort of hero's journey when it comes to biohacking, whereby we're faced with quite an intense medical condition. In your case, and certainly mine as well, I had to overcome a career-driven burnout. I was a lawyer, and everything sort of broke down my health and the health of the people that I loved around me. And it's like, well, what do? Do you go to the doctor that gives you the most amount of pills, or do you go to the doctor that tries to take you off your pills? And it's a very good point. Yeah, it's quite an interesting pivot when, I decided, well, actually, I want to be the one that tells my client through health coaching that they should really trust the doctor that wants to get off the medication, not onto more medication. And I think it's that whole concept, right, of living in a sick care-driven system as opposed to a preventive system, which is a lot more Eastern-ish inside of philosophy. And it's something that you see more in the East, where you go to see a practitioner before you get sick, not when you're sick, whereas we live in a society that just encourages us to get prescription medication once we're already sick, and we're just treating symptoms and not the root cause.
Yeah, that's very true. In traditional Chinese medicine terms, you don't pay your doctor if you're getting sick. You pay them when you're well.
Right? Isn't it incredible? As you might know, I found myself on a slightly Robinson Crusoe type of island for 5 months in Indonesia, in the middle of nowhere, living completely a primal life. It was quite intense. But there is really this concept that if you constantly look into your health with your own sovereignty and your own autonomy and be proactive about that, you're not going to really need a doctor. You just every day taking steps and incremental changes to make your health better and better. And now we just seem to want to relinquish our health and sense of responsibility to some entities. It's just
the issue is when you're a slightly obsessive personality like me, and you spot and it becomes a bit obsessive, because sometimes just letting go is a good thing as well. And I think, on a serious note, when I got ill and I had all those months off work, the best thing I could do was just start to relax. The fact that I just wasn't very well and I had post-viral fatigue and I needed to just look after myself.
And what were your top hacks for relaxing? Have you tried breathwork, meditation? What really did it for you?
The thing that kind of started me on my journey was something that I'd never considered doing ever, and that was going to an EFT specialist, emotional freedom therapy.
Yeah.
He specialised in fatigue. He's based in London. He's called Ashley Mayer, and within 10 minutes of going to see him, I kind of felt like I was going to be okay. It was just such a kind of profound moment. He was tapping all over my face and a little bit on my kind of upper chest and under my arm. And I kind of got very emotional very quickly, which was great because that was the emotional freedom therapy actually working and kind of letting it all out. And then he started to explain that, you know, it's a hard concept for people to get to grips with, but when you get ill and you have long-term problems with your illness, part of what's going on is your mind can make it worse because you're so obsessed with, especially with me, with the fatigue. You know, I'd be so worried about doing this, that, and the other that I was kind of making it worse. I wasn't allowing myself to just relax and let the parasympathetic nervous system kick in and start to heal. So that was really important for me. I mean, it doesn't work for everyone, but I have to say I've recommended him to a lot of people over the last 7 or 8 years, and they've all found great benefit of seeing him.
Yeah, I think tapping is wonderful. It's really dropping from that mind to the somatic, right? Because we live in our head a lot, especially sort of type A, you know, overworker, overachiever. When we're always constantly in the mindset of wanting more, doing more, which is always chasing and dropping down to the body that has a whole world of things that it wants to express and wants to say, but we don't really let it be heard, right? Like animals in the nature and the jungle, they will tremble, they will shake, they will move. Whereas now when we have a stressor and stress response, we kind of freeze. We even stop breathing sometimes. So that's what I call with my clients. I call it like email apnea, where people, you know, they get that sort of Google meeting invite and they go, and although breath retention is healthy.
I've definitely got email apnea.
You do?
Well, you know, like before you know it, you've spent an hour on your emails and you haven't taken a deep breath.
Yeah. How do you overcome that? Have you built in a breathwork practice into your daily life?
Not great. I've had a pretty stressful morning this morning, just kind of mopping up fighting all sorts of fires, and not really doing the amount of exercise that I would like to do. But yeah, I mean, definitely, obviously, try and prioritize meditation as much as possible, and not really breath work, but I do a lot of qigong, which is sort of
simple. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's really wonderful. Have you ever tried a physiological sigh? I don't know if you've ever been told this technique. It's very powerful because, you know, breath work is something that you sort of need to set time apart and be with a breathwork practitioner. I do it a lot, but I found that having real-time tools that you can just equip yourself within your self-care toolkit that you can just engage with instantly is really useful. So perhaps, I don't know if you've ever tried, but if you have your next sort of email apnea, going to double inhale, sigh. So it goes like this. And actually, it just has this instant activation of the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
Can you do it a few times? Maybe try to do it 3 times in a row, like... And you just really like, woo, you know, hello, I'm back, right?
Yeah.
And I find that having this like real-time little hacks like this can really get you out of the mind into the body and back into full focus and really hardwire the brain for, okay, right, I'm back, I'm safe, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great thing to do in the middle of a meeting without warning people what you're going to do.
Well, although you say that, but you could become, you know, the cool kid in the meeting, right? That goes, hey, everyone, let's take some physiological side. Yeah. This is the latest hack. You want to know this. It's funny, right? I have this quite a lot as well because most of my clients are either lawyers or executive. And, you know, when you start talking about meditation and mindfulness, it's a bit too woo-woo or la-la-land for them to relate, but then you start talking about, you know, the power of the brain and getting focus and getting a sharper concentration at work, and then suddenly you get their full attention. They're, ooh. Yeah,
and I've certainly noticed, you know, with the TV channel that I've worked at for 15, 16 years, I've noticed that, you know, when I started out there, I was the self-help guy doing all that woo-woo stuff, and now a lot of people are really interested in what I do, and, you know, and often seek me out to have a little chat about some nonsense that I've been posting on my Instagram or on my email. And I think these things are becoming more mainstream. And as you say, it is because people realize that it's, you know, when it starts to kind of give you the edge or help with your sleep or something like that, well, that's something that everybody wants. I mean, there's one of my new books coming out this week.
Yeah. Is it this week? I'm so excited about it. I thought I would wear some orange colorful color in honor of your energy theme.
That's very kind of you. Yeah, well, there's a whole chapter on hacking that most noble of causes, which is hangovers, which I think, you know, it's just like so relevant to, especially us Brits. You know, we like the odd drink. Don't want to go crazy, but we like the odd drink, and we like to feel good the next day. So the whole chapter on hacking hangovers and all the things that I've learned in my years of kind of biohacking and diving deep into all this stuff, and it's been great fun to put together.
So what's the release date? When can our audience get a copy of your book then?
Well, as I said to you, I've been fighting fires all morning, but Friday.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, don't worry. You're opening up a whole load of trauma. No, it's fine. Yeah, it's available on Friday, but it's available on pre-order now. So it's called When Life Is a Bit Meh, You Need Energy. And if you just search for my name or for meh on Amazon, you will find it, because there's not many books with the word meh in the title.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cover looks really cool as well. I saw the cover, so it looks really nice. Obviously, I don't want to do any spoiler alert or, you know, but if we could tease people into why you would want to get the book right now, what can you give us in terms of flavor? Yeah,
of course. I mean, I'm quite happy to give a few spoilers. You know, I mean, obviously we talk about the alcohol chapter, you know, like the idea behind every chapter and the alcohol chapter is that it's a combination of biohacking and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is what my background is in. I started training in NLP 17 years ago. I've written 3 books on NLP already, published in 12 languages. So this is the 4th that has come out. And for this one, I think I've enjoyed writing this one the most because it's the closest to home. You know, it's the stuff that I like doing the most. So it's kind of using the biohacking to make instant changes, and then it's using the NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, to help it stick and make those changes long lasting, which has been great. The one chapter where it was quite hard to get the NLP in was the alcohol chapter, because there's so much in terms of the biohacking and the hacks. And I was like, how am I going to crowbar a bit of NLP into this chapter? I did it very successfully, but that took a little bit of thought. So there's different kind of sections based on fuel, alcohol, mind, home, sleep, nature, exercise, even kind of cold, hacking the cold showers, cryotherapy, cold plunges, wild swimming, and then NLP techniques to help you cope with the cold, and proven to help you feel warmer when it's cold.
I love that, because I think that's one of our biggest passion point in common, going back to nature and being a bit more primal and tapping into that sense of getting out of the comfort zone, which is really the killer. And that's the beauty about going into the cold immersion, and getting that sense of knowing that beauty is in the getting out of comfort. And we live in a world that is so comfort seeking, right? AC there, turning a button here, getting the lights, then we get our circadian rhythm completely out of whack. And it's just that constant chase for comfort can actually get us into a loop that is really unhealthy. Yeah.
I've been thinking about that recently, actually, because David Sinclair, I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh, yes.
He wrote this book on longevity, perhaps the book on longevity.
The book on longevity, yes.
Yeah. I first heard him on Joe Rogan, and then when I heard him on Joe Rogan, I got in touch with him. He came on my podcast, and you know, his whole thing is about stressing the body. So much about the importance of creating brown fat when you get into the cold, which I don't really understand, but essentially young people have loads of brown fat.
Babies too. Babies too.
And old people don't. But we can create it by stressing out our bodies, particularly with cold showers and so on. So that's actually one of the reasons why cold baths and ice bathing, I really don't like to even say that it's a weight loss tool, because it really minimizes the depth of the exercise, which is so much about meditation and breath. So that's reducing, I think, how beautiful it is. But it does have a knock-on effect on a really healthy lean fat mass, in the sense that you would reduce the amount of white fat, which is the fat that we're all trying to fight against, and you have more of the brown fat. And the reason it's brown fat is because it has more mitochondria storage. So that's why the color is driven brown
through the mitochondria. And it's just something I've noticed as I'm doing it myself, and just getting into that cold shower more and more, and then stepping into the ice bath.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
Do you use the whole freezer butcher situation where you go into your own freezer, or how do you do your ice bath?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've always been a bit of a wuss with the cold, but yeah, I'm more of a kind of cold showers, but I love the cryotherapy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So great, you know.
Yeah, I saw that. We both went to the same at London Cryo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great, because I saw that they followed you on some of your Instagram posts. I mean, I think the thing is that it's fun as well, isn't it? I get out, and not only do I feel good, but I've kind of had a really enjoyable few minutes, and I feel, you know, buzzing and ready to go for the rest of the day.
Absolutely, yes, I really like it too, and it's a nice, like, sharp little feeling when you get up to the 3 minutes. So you're like, ooh, okay, you can really feel it, right? Gives you that little boost.
Interrupting this podcast for one moment to remind you that it is brought to you by Magnesium Breakthrough, easily the best magnesium supplement that I am using, and my podcast partner today. It's been, for quite a while actually, selling faster than the company that makes it, Bioptimizers, have been able to keep up with. So it's been out of stock for a little while over the last 12 months or so. It's already sold out a few times, but it is not at the moment. And if you go to magbreakthrough.com/zestology, you'll be able to get it. It's the most effective magnesium supplement I have tried, and it combines 7 different forms of magnesium. And I mean, as you know, I'm a skeptic on these things. I'm not quite sure why it does work, but I have used a lot of different magnesium supplements over the years, including Epsom salt baths, magnesium sprays. I sometimes use a magnesium liquid as well, but honestly, I prefer this stuff. If you go to magbreakthrough.com/zestology, use the coupon code zestology10, you will get 10% off. magbreakthrough.com/zestology, and if you UK, go to bioptimizers.co.uk and use the same discount code zestology10. Let me know how you get on with it as well. I love it. I think it's great. magbreakthrough.com/zestology. Back to the show. I talk about, talk quite a bit about nature, and I know that's a big theme of yours as well, you know, getting back to nature as much as possible. And then I think the definition, or one of the really good definitions of biohacking, is, you know, living as natural a world as possible. But when that's not possible, using kind of technology to help us mimic a natural environment. And in terms of nature, I talk about Gustav Mahler, who had this, I mean, he was incredibly prolific, first as a composer and then a conductor. And he had this composing cabin in the woods in Austria in the late 19th century. And he used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and have a very simple breakfast on a bench outside his composing cabin in the woods as the kind of sun came through, the dappled sun came through the trees. And he would write all morning, complete solitude. He wouldn't want to see anyone all morning, but he would just be kind of alone and inspired by nature. And then at lunchtime, before he had lunch, he'd go for a dip in the local lake, and he'd get out, dry in the sun, and then get in for another dip. And I thought, that sounds bloody great. I wish I could do a bit of that. I don't have a composing cabin in my garden, though. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, but it does really shift us. I actually listened to one of your podcasts where you were recording from the sea, and I could hear how perky your voice was compared. Not that your voice is not absolutely perky in all your other episodes, but I really noticed. I was like, you were saying how happy you were to be by the ocean. I think it was your January podcast. Right. And I was thinking, yes, I can really hear it in your voice.
Yeah. We recorded. I've recorded quite a few podcasts, kind of out and about and around the place. And obviously, that's something that's changed so much, hasn't it, over the last few months? Not being able to record out and about and doing more Zoom calls and more Instagram lives.
Gosh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Out and about soon.
Yeah, it is really, really vital to go back to nature and really tap into that sense of not living indoors, right? It's so funny because we always talk about this, this animal rights movement and like zoo and animals. And I'm just thinking, yes, what about human rights? Being kept indoors and groomed to be, staying at a screen all day long. Maybe we're going into political territories here, but, I'm genuinely concerned about, sort of being indoors and claustrophobic and not going into our natural habitat, which also is nature. We are meant to be in the sun. And that's one of the most awful things that we see, right, in big cities like London. Most of my clients are chronically depleted in vitamin D. They just don't spend enough time outdoors. And we have this sort of almost fear of the outdoor, like the sun is bad for you and all those fear factor. That's a lot of, I don't know, I just find it sad that we get more and more out of touch of nature. And I love that you said biohacking is about reconnecting us with nature, because I don't know how you see it, Tony, but sometimes I hear quite a pushback when I talk about biohacking, that it's very gadget driven and technology driven. And of course, there is a huge element of biohacking that is about the technology. But the way I see it, which is very similar to what you've said, is about empowering us to use technology to serve us and not to enslave us. So having the technology as something that serves you, that you're in control and not that controls you, regaining your power vis-a-vis technology, and actually mimicking that, going back to nature. So going back on your point about sleep, I use biohacks like, using my Aura ring or using my Muse meditation to try and get my circadian rhythm better, to mitigate some of the technology and the Zoom nights, So I do believe that there is so much that can be said about tapping into that power of nature. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's, also some, why you have to force yourself to get outside. If you're working from home and working in your underpants, there's really no need to go for a morning walk. And all of a sudden it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you haven't been outside. And so just a basic thing of kind of, doing some exercise in the morning, getting some good light in your eyes and getting a few deep breaths and getting a bit of a sweat on in the morning. Often I find that I have to really force myself to do it,
Yeah, but isn't it nice that when you know that you're tracking, you have a bit of a gamification that comes into mind, like you want to hack your own results. So I don't know about you, but I find that if I set a goal, I'm going to do my 10,000 steps today, and I'm tracking it. It's what I say to all my clients. Whatever you want to hack, you have to track, right? So if you know that you're tracking it, you have more of an incentive to nail it, because you're having that game with yourself. So it's what I call like gamification of health and wellness. Do you find that work as well with your personality type?
Yes, and I think that's, not only is that tracking, I'm such a big fan of that. I've been doing that for a long time myself, but that's a real core part of the book, actually, in terms of collecting metrics, or as I call it, metrics.
Nice one.
I think, what we're looking for is, I heard this phrase, you want numbers, not narratives. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if you think something's working or not. These days, we've got technology that can help us prove it, that can help us work out whether it is or not. So I look at all the different ways that you can, biohack, use psychological techniques to improve your productivity and your health and your energy and everything else and your focus. But then how can you prove it? How can you make sure what's working? So looking at what metrics to collect and how to collect them and how to analyze the results as well. And then taking the next steps as well, going really deep on metrics and data, detailed health testing using stuff like Omnos or 24.
Yes.
Yeah, so those kind of things.
I got that. Yeah, I noticed we had quite a lot in common. Yeah, I found it really useful, actually. I did the elements and the hormones ones. I did the whole lot. And it really find it quite empowering, because you get to know yourself a bit more. That's an underlying principle of biohacking, isn't it? Know yourself, right?
Yeah, I find it very helpful. I'm looking at doing a bit more detailed testing now with a few different companies, and it's just handy to know what's working and what's not. And then collecting subjective numbers as well. I'm and actually there's a free template that you can download on my site, which is asking yourself subjective questions every day. Oh, Omnos have just started.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, yes, Thomas, we were just talking about you. You must have had the little ring in the ears.
Yeah. Collecting subjective data as well. So asking yourself every day, what were my energy levels like today? How was my focus? What was my gut like? How did I sleep last night? And there, that's not objective data, but it's a subjective number that you're giving yourself out of 10 or 100 or something like that. And then you can start to spot correlations. So you can say, oh, on the days that I have magnesium, I sleep 6% better. Or on the day I morning, I feel like I've got more focus. And it's, once you start getting those measurements as well.
Yes. Do you use a journal for those as well? Do you use everything, you tracking everything with your data, with your Aura and your Fitbit or your Apple, or you actually take journal paper and you measure all of those and you keep a more personal journal board?
Yes, I collected a journal in a moleskin journals. I've got like so many. I'm up in my loft in my house and I've got so many of these old black books lying around everywhere. And I kind of outlined the process in the book actually, but now I tend to use apps, and also I use Google Forms, which is good because you can kind of set it up. You can set it up to collect percentages or numbers between 1 and 10, but then the results just go through to Google Sheets, and there on Google Sheets you can analyze the data very easily. So particularly, I actually wanted to, as a freebie along with the book, I wanted to give away my own version of my tracking sheet on my site, and I couldn't do it. There was no way I could do it without collecting everybody's data at once.
Right.
So I've recorded a little video on my site which explains how people can set up a Google Form or a Google Sheet, but that's great. That is such an easy way to collect the data, and because Google Sheets is so advanced, it will do the heavy lifting of analyzing it.
And I think it's so empowering, right, to let people know that they can track their own self, in the sense that I always say that to my clients as well, and I don't know how that resonates with you, but any success story is usually a success because you have objectives. So at work, you're going to have KPIs with your finances. You're going to have investment objectives. You don't leave things to chances and just hope for the best. Like, I've never heard of any entrepreneur, anyone really, or any business person gotten to the top to where they are by sheer luck. They have an analytical mind. They have an objective, a goal, and a strategy to reach the goal. Why wouldn't it be the same with your health? Like, why do you somehow think that you could just, play your own luck, not have a KPI, not have an objective, not have a goal, not have a strategy and a system? It's the same thing. It's the key to success. I think it's the recipe to success, the same ingredient, and just playing with a different outcome.
Definitely. And you'll know from coaching, I mean, certainly in NLP terms, when you're working with a client and you say, let's say they've got a phobia of something, you say, all right, well, you think about that thing now, what it might be flying, for example. And
absolutely.
1 and 10, where 10 is intense fear and 1 is feeling absolutely fine. And then they'll tell you 7 or 8, whatever it might be. And then you do the technique and then you ask them again and they'll think about it. And if it's worked, maybe like a 2 or a 3, and you think, great, it's actually worked. And if they say 8, then you know it hasn't worked and you need to do some more work. So it's a really practical way to work on yourself. But I think often when it comes to, as you say, if it's like something to do with business, we're slightly more inclined to do it. But I think there's a lot of people who would listen to this conversation. They'd be like, come on, guys, you're keeping spreadsheets about your health. I mean, and your focus, like, get a life. But I love all this stuff. I'm a total geek and I think it's great. But I know it's not.
I'm the geekiest geek as well. And you know what? I mean, I would say though, Tony, if someone tells you get a life, like, what kind of a life are we talking about? Because I bet you that if you get that sheet, you're going to add years to your life and add life to your years. So, are we talking a life that you don't want to live because you're going to be sick and unwell? Or are we talking about a glorious life? Because my definition of glorious life is living life in my own terms, and living life in my own terms is most definitely by being healthy. I don't really know anyone that has to be dealing with illness, myself included, because I had to go, bottom low in terms of illness when I was facing my own burnout. But it would be an absolute lie to say that back then I was gloriously happy. I wasn't. Illness is very limiting. So it's actually just knowing that you can take positive and proactive action to empower yourself to live the life that you want. And the underlying foundation of any glorious life is really health and wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. I think that's the nicest thing about getting older, actually. You just stop caring what other people think. You just become more and more eccentric.
I know. So speaking of eccentric, I'm conscious of your time, and I'm already so grateful that you've stayed for that long. But I know that one of our passion in common is nutrition, and you're also quite primal in that sense. And I would love to open the floor to a bit of a conversation around nutrition before I thank you and let you go. I love the fact that you're also really into that nutrient density and that nonsense approach to diet. If I may call it diet, I think it's more of a lifestyle. Do you want to tell us a bit more about how you got into, thinking about what you put in your plate and how you eat and what you eat?
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting I know that what I eat and the fuel that I put in my body has such an impact on my energy levels. And I knew that the book had to have a chapter on food, or fuel as I've called it. But I kind of felt like through everything that I've looked at, I didn't want to tell people what to eat, and I'm not a nutritionist, But one of the things that I've done throughout is quote a lot of science and research and scientific papers and studies wherever possible, because I think that's sometimes where the world of biohacking slightly falls down, when people are able to say, yeah, but what about the science? So you say, well, look, there it is in black and white. They've done loads of research and it proves it. And the science based around not what we eat, but when we eat is so compelling in terms of intermittent fasting. And that has made it, never quite knew what to eat for breakfast anyway. Oh, is cornflakes, are they healthy or not? I just never knew. But just ditching breakfast altogether has had a huge impact on my energy levels. And the science is so compelling around intermittent fasting. So kind of look at that quite a bit. Avoiding spikes and crashes. And then not just intermittent fasting, but kind of longer fasts. And then
that's really great.
Yeah. And then I think also in terms of nutrition, one of the interesting things about what you were saying earlier about how easy it is for you to do what you do because you're living this lifestyle anyway. It's like a massive passion for you. And for me, I think there's a similar thing around certain histamine intolerance. For example, I found out that I was histamine intolerant a few years ago, and I started a little passion project on the side, a histamine intolerance website, which has just been so enjoyable. And histamine intolerance only appeals to like around 15% of the population, but people who have it really care. And it is me to post about it because I'm eating low histamine all the time.
Right. Have you found, because I've helped clients in the past in my coaching had histamine intolerance by taking kidneys?
Yes.
Eating kidneys. Have you found that as well? I'm a big fan of organ meat, of course. So anything that I can solve with an organ, I'll just throw it in there, Tell me you've got histamine. Yay, kidneys.
Right. Yeah.
No, but really, have you found it? Have you explored that yourself?
I have, yeah. I've tried, there are 2 kidney supplements that are quite handy to have. And the reason that kidney is so good is because it helps you create DAO or DAO.
Yes. So
boost these levels of DAO in the body that helps you deal with histamine more effectively. There's a brand called Ancestral Health that makes kidney supplements. Fantastic.
But actually, this one is the colostrum.
The colostrum, right? Yeah, the kidney one is quite hard to get in this country, but I've managed to import it in at great expense from somewhere. Can't quite remember where, but Huntergatherer brought up.
I was going to say they do it now, Huntergatherer, which is wonderful. And also you can, I don't know how much you like to do that, but you can just find kidney at your butcher's, right? Kidney steak. It's quite a British delicacy.
It's got a kidney steak and kidney pie. Yeah.
I mean, I would scratch the pie part and go carb free.
You're right. Oh, you got to have it with a pie, a gluten free. But I haven't cooked kidney that much, so I need to give it a go. I think I've made some nice chicken liver pate, but even that I'm not a real expert at it. But there's been plenty of time to learn to cook in the last year with all these lockdowns, so maybe I'll have a bit more time over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I found that a great little hack to include more organ meat into your everyday life is actually to mince it and to blend it into mince. So if you go to your butcher and you get like lamb mince or beef mince, and then you actually blend whatever organ you want and you puree it into the mince, it's going to have more of a tolerable taste, if I may say so, for new palates that are getting used to organ meat. Also, you can, I don't know if you've ever tried, but you can freeze it while it's raw. And then if you really don't like the taste, you can swallow it which is, a bit, but then you don't have to. What are you doing? Oh, I'm just swallowing kidney. All good. Let me do my things.
See here.
Well, why not, right? If that can replace pharmaceuticals.
We've already said how eccentric we are.
Exactly. We're just, owning it up. But, it's funny that in nowadays and in this day and age, this is eccentric. But if we look around to all the ancestral tribes, and even nowadays, the tribes that are still existing, they drink blood. They give blood to the pregnant woman. They keep the liver as the most nutrient dense. That's their vitamin blend. They don't have access to multivitamins. They just, organ meat is the multivitamin, and it is the natural multivitamin. It's funny how we've grown into a culture where things have to be pretty to be tolerable, right? Instead of useful.
Well, you could say that in every area of life. For example, we really should be doing this while we're on a walk, walking around in London.
Yeah.
A bit of low-level exercise rather than sitting down. And in fact,
absolutely.
I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to record all the podcast intros walking around London because I'm just going to get a bit of extra exercise when I do it.
Ben Greenfield does that. I don't know if you see, but his podcast, he's on the elliptical. He just gets it done.
Yeah,
I love that.
I like to think he copied me.
Ah, right. I didn't know who copied whom.
Yeah.
Good one. I like to do that, but I'm always conscious about the quality of the recording, and it's just that same for the Bluetooth. I know they're really, really not biohacking approved because of the Bluetooth and the brain health. But again, sometimes in those really small moments where you have to choose the lesser of the evil, right? So I'm also very conscious about not using too much Bluetooth and switching off my Wi-Fi and doing all that good stuff. But we also sometimes, need to do what we have to do, right?
Yeah, I think that is a really good point. That's a point that I tried to make in the book as well. For instance, my job is I'm a TV presenter at Sky. I'm in a studio with no windows. I've got some pretty hardcore microphones and batteries and earpieces attached to my waist for kind of hours at a time. I get home really late, so it's not great for my circadian rhythms. And yeah, I wouldn't change any of it. I love the job, and it's absolutely brilliant. And I'm surrounded by 400 screens in the studio. It's quite an intense, not very natural working environment, but that's the price that I'm willing to pay. It's a brilliant.
For sure.
And then I'll just make sure when I get home that I get up the next morning and go outside and have a nice walk and get some good bright light in my eyes.
Exactly, and you can also maybe spend more time in nature at the weekend to top up for what you've missed out. I don't know how you find that, but I always tell my clients, because they get quite anxious about the 10,000 steps a day when they're, as you said, like you have studio recording. Some of my clients are desk bound because they're lawyers, or they have to go to court and they're sat down in court all day long. And they just tell me, like, I physically don't have the hours in the day to get 10,000 steps. Okay, so do 70,000 in a week. You just go on extra long walk in the weekend. So I don't know how you found that, but I found that having measurable data that you split in a week instead of a day actually gives you a sense of freedom, because you hit your target on a weekly basis as opposed to daily basis.
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, definitely letting go is so important, isn't it? If you can't, there's no point about worrying about it because you can't do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm so grateful that you joined today. It was super insightful to hear all about your hacks and how you go into biohacking. I can't wait to get your book, and everyone just now you know how to pre-order it, so make sure you get on that.
Well, and it's been great to talk to you. I was obviously doing a bit of research. I like your nickname on your site, not a solicitor, but the soul-icitor.
Yes, it's sweet. It was given by my client. So it's quite a journey, going from London litigator to becoming a health coach. And I actually coach some of my former colleagues now. So I really tapped into the pool of becoming the sort of legal world coaches or lawyer coach, because it's a world that I love. And in a sense, I don't know how that sounds, but it's the absolute truth. I became the coach that I wish I had when I was a lawyer, because I had to quit my career because I really faced the biggest, deepest burnout, and I didn't think there was any light at the end of the tunnel. And I thought I had to choose between health and career. And now I'm actually absolutely certain that we can have it all. We just need a blueprint, a map. We need guidance, we need mentors, coaches, biohacking, all the help that we can get, and then we can thrive. And I do think that we can be powerfully successful and healthy at the same time. We just need to make some shifts and changes and adopt a different lifestyle.
Yeah, and we can eat frozen kidney.
And we can eat frozen kidneys. Yeah, absolutely. Whatever it takes, right?
Whatever it takes. I mean, I think I might try that, but I really can't imagine it being anything less than an unpleasant experience.
If you do, please do let me know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, Tony. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time and sharing your presence and your energy. Obviously, everyone could see how energy-driven you are, and so I hope that it gives everyone extra motivation to read your book on how to get more energy into their life. Isn't that what we all want, right?
Yeah. Thank you to Charlene, and thank you for listening. Next week on Zestology, I'm going to one of the top restaurants in London. I don't want to brag too much, but there's a special podcast themed all around this, and I'll give you a little trailer. Meat, fruit, and biohacking. Wow. So that is coming next week on Zestology, and I will tell you about my experience there as well. Before we finish, my podcast partners today are Magnesium Breakthrough from the wonderful Bioptimizers. You can get up to 40% off at magbreakthrough.com/zestology. It's a deal available nowhere else. And on my podcast in May, I've partnered with Magnesium Breakthrough. You've probably heard me a couple of weeks ago talking about this. When I run out of Magnesium Breakthrough, I really notice it in terms of dehydration, weirdly. For me, I think I'm prone to dehydration, and I've found out that magnesium is an important part of the puzzle of rehydrating for me. So I go to that link and I use my own discount code. In fact, there are two different links. There's one for all around the world, which is magbreakthrough.com/zestology. And if you're in the UK, head to bioptimizers.co.uk and use the code Zestology10 wherever you go. So if you fancy a bit of magnesium breakthrough, it is magbreakthrough.com/zestology. Use the code Zestology10. A deficiency of magnesium is linked to all sorts of things, including increased mast cells, which I have to look out for. But if you find magnesium helpful, I think you will enjoy this. That's it for today's podcast. Thanks so much for listening. See you next week. Meat fruit